Please welcome Dr. Arpan Waghray of Providence WellBeing Trust.
Mother Teresa once famously said, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love." I'm so honored to join you all today in the Alignment for Progress movement, and hopefully all of us play our small part with great love. I'm Arpan Waghray, and I serve as the CEO for Providence's WellBeing Trust. We're a foundation dedicated to advancing mental health for all, with a laser-sharp focus on improving access to behavioral health care and support, along with driving meaningful and measurable improvement in the lives of those whom we're privileged to serve. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you someone who comes from a family as passionate about advancing the mental health for the nation as the Kennedys, Kathyrn Ramstad. She has had a diverse career from leading consumer product companies including PepsiCo and General Mills, a top professional search firm, Russell Reynolds Associates, and currently serves as the president of Christen Group, her family office. Kathryn is also the past chair of Bring Change to Mind and continues to steward the organization through her leadership. Bring Change to Mind is a national organization co-founded by actor Glenn Close in 2010 and established to reduce stigma and discrimination that surround mental illness. Her last name may sound familiar to many of you in the room. Her husband, late Congressman Jim Ramstad, was the co-author of the landmark Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act. Today we honor Kathryn, her late husband, and the Ramstad family for their transformational leadership in mental health and addiction. With that, I give you Kathyrn Ramstad.
Thank you, Doctor. It is a real honor and privilege to be here today. It's an issue that's highly personal for me. My late husband, Congressman Jim Ramstad, and Patrick were dear friends and colleagues in Congress. They both came from a bygone era. Jim, a moderate Republican, obviously Patrick, a Democrat. Alas, that was a time in Washington when members of Congress worked across the aisle on issues that really mattered to people and touched people's lives. Mental health and addiction affects all Americans. These life and death issues do not care if what your political leaning is, what your social status is, what your gender is, or your economic status. They have nothing to do with Republicans and nothing to do with Democrats. Jim and the late Senator Paul Wellstone began working on the Mental Health and Addiction Parity Bill back in 1997. When Paul died tragically in an airplane accident in 2002, Patrick stepped up to work with Jim on the Democratic side of the aisle. As Jim and Patrick began to dig into the issues and work to build support for their legislation, they became dear friends. Jim always said Patrick was the little brother he never had. Unlike most people in public life at that time, they both were very open about their addiction journeys and their recovery. And when Patrick needed support, Jim walked with him. They showed everybody that this wasn't a partisan issue. I learned so much about addiction and mental health from their work on the Parity Bill. I sat through countless meetings, rallies, field hearings, and press conferences all around the country. We heard numerous families describe the tragedies they faced and the hardships they had to endure when they sought care and attempted to convince the insurance companies to pay for it. I saw their struggles and I began to understand the issues in more depth. In 2008, Jim was retiring from Congress, but Jim and Patrick were able to finally pass the Parity Bill. They say that it probably took some divine intervention. That may be, but we all know that for sure that Patrick's father, Senator Ted Kennedy, and his colleague Chris Dodd orchestrated some very, very creative legislative strategy to make the underlying parity bill the vehicle to pass the must-pass TARP banking bill to save the ailing economy and to ultimately enact the parity law. An entire book could be written on that legislation. As a regular citizen, I just thought once a law passes, that's the end of the journey. But we all learned that that was the beginning of the journey. It took 4 long years to write the rule for implementation, but the law has not always been followed by some insurance companies, and as Patrick said earlier, even by the federal government, because there's constantly searching for loopholes and workarounds. I'm so grateful to Patrick and his organization for continuing to push insurance companies state by state and federally to adhere to this law. The coverage is critical for everybody for mental health and addiction needs. Thank you, Patrick. That was a big part of Jim's legacy, and you've been committed and continue to fight that fight. And I know that Jim is with you in spirit. Because of the work Jim and Patrick did on the parity bill, I joined a board that the doctors explained called Bring Change to Mind, a youth mental health organization that basically focuses on media campaigns, public service arrangements, but it's really the leading voice in normalizing the mental health conversations. And our work over the past decade has been focused on scaling peer-led and evidence-based high school club models. Bring Change to Mind is an amazing organization. It's in 520 schools in 43 states, and it's saving lives through this peer-to-peer support club. It's clearly the preeminent organization that supports high school students to open discussions, eliminating stigma and the discrimination of mental illness. Again, thank you, Patrick, for your continued excellence and thorough work on parity for the millions of Americans still suffering. And thank you and Amy for your support and friendship over the years. I know Jim would have loved to be here, and he would always say when he introduced Patrick, if President Kennedy was writing Profiles in Courage today, he would have certainly dedicated an entire chapter to Patrick. President Kennedy, I know, is very proud of you, or would be very proud of you. I know Jim was, and I am, and thank you very much.